Ja, hallo, genau. Herzlich willkommen zum
There. Welcome
Digitalisierung und
on this
Gedenkstätten
panel, Digitalization and Educational Work at Memorial Sites. And just like it's suitable for a panel on digitalization, we've had some technical issues and have to start late. This might be deemed a topic for the debate that's to come. I'm happy to announce 3 projects that emerged in collaboration with the House of the Wannsee-Konferenz and that offer a digital educational application like the ZDF's application on the new feature film on the Wannsee-Konferenz, which Dinos Chinshana will be presenting. Then we have the website Remembering Injustice, An Unrecht erinnern, developed by Ruth Preuße. Ruth Preuße can't be with us because she's sick today. And then we will have Nora Manukian, who will step in for her from the educational site Ehrenheinz Seithain. And then we've got the new project questioning Eichmann's numbers, a pan-European project that's statistics and catastrophe. This is a project that will be presented by Flavia Schidrinho and Christoph Kreutzmüller, whom you've just met, and by Anthony Zakrzewski, who is joining us via Zoom. And as we've lost some time, I'd like to start with the first presentation. We will take 10 minutes to present the individual projects, and after that, I will talk to the presenters, ask them about their projects, about digitization, and about the advantages it holds, and maybe also some disadvantages in general. There's going to be a Q&A session, including the public. And after that, we will offer breakout sessions for the 3 different projects. And then you can get in touch in case there were specific questions on virtual presentations, for example, like the ZDF one, or on statistics and catastrophe. Then later on, you can ask these questions in the breakout sessions. And of course, also the third project, Remembering Injustice. Now, we have Dinos Chinshana with us.
She's a structural engineer, and well, that is not surprising, but since 1994, she has been working in the media, and since 1994, she was responsible for online projects and until 2009, she devised new formats, and Dinos Chinshana has been since ZDF for a few years now. She then was responsible for the marker, which was nominated for the Grimme Award. And then she was also responsible for ZDF Culture in 2018. The Department for New Digital Cultural Partnerships was set up, and joint projects between the cultural industry and creative industries and ZDF. And well, this cooperation is important for the public from education and from creative industries. I'm very glad indeed that Dinos Chinshana is here, and I herewith hand the floor to her. Thank you very much, Jakob Müller. Thank you very much for the friendly introduction, and also thank you for inviting me. I would like to take the next 10 minutes in order to introduce a project that we devised jointly with the House of the Wannsee-Konferenz, and we devised it jointly. It's a new form of cooperation, and I would like to give a general introduction of this VR application. It is called the House of the Wannsee Conference, and it is also part. There is a TV film, there are shorter documentation units, and there are also media that can be used for teaching. And there is a VR application now that is complementing it, and it is also meant for teaching and as teaching material. This online module itself gives users of the media library the possibility to visit the Wannsee Villa virtually. The basis for the curation is the objects of exposition or exhibition, and also access to production that ZTF has made at the occasion of this anniversary. What's important for us and interesting for us is that this VR application is a kind of host, and I would simply like to show it. And the start page of this self-guided tour will then show you, and my colleague would show you how this application works. And by the way, the video jitters somewhat on Zoom. In fact, in live operation, it does not. Well, this will be multitasking, literally, because, well, I will have to be operating different channels here, but you should be able to see properly. Welcome to the virtual visit of the Wannsee Memorial Site. And it used to be a hotel for SS and police. In January 1942, high-ranking officials from Nazi Germany came together from different ministries and other offices in order to plan for the deportation of millions of Jews. The importance of the Wannsee-Konferenz that went down in history as the conference that planned the deportation and murder of Jews. Well, what happened in the run-up to this conference? Well, what was their life and the situation of the victims before, and how was the implementation, and how did German society behave vis-a-vis the rising level of exclusion and deportation of Jews? Well, there are 5 different topics. There are documents, photos, videos, and reports of the victims, and then also the comments made by historians. Well, Mirko already described it very well. There are 5 different rooms in this application. 3 are virtual, and 2 are photographies of the historical rooms, the conference room. The basic idea is that there will be a guiding topic. The time span revolves around the time before and also after. And what is special is the idea that these historical rooms can be entered even if you're unable to go on site. Of course, it is a complement and it can't replace reality. And Marco showed it as a moderator. There are video contents that can then be fetched in these historical rooms. To give you an example, I would like to show you one of these virtual rooms. And it takes a moment because I really have to switch back and forth between my screens. And you might notice a short break when I have to click my way through. This is a virtual room, and as you can see, Mirko is in this room. If you click OK on the floor, you can see his introduction to the room, and it was important for us if this application is used in schools, the teachers should be able to have another person, the curator in this case. Well, how to move in this room? Well, actually, you click the mouse and these arrows on the floor are those points. There is a historical document that comes from the memorial site. 15th of October, the looting is continuing. Well, of course, there is a text to it, but I also have an extract from the documentation. I will play it just for a short time. The sound is too poor, the interpreter unfortunately can't translate it. You can see an extract from the documentation, and there are other contents that you can click on, and then you can take a look at the different groups. And it was important for us that it is also shown that the perspective of the victims is more in the foreground, and thus we really followed the duration concept of the memorial site. Well, I'm curious how my colleague will react, because this really is the historical conference room. And this is what it looks like. We actually tried to show that you can look outside the windows, and thus we wanted to show that it's not just a virtual space, but that it is a new room. It is newly furnished, and these are the biographies of the participants of the meeting, and there are also extracts from the documentation. And there are extracts from the film, but they are also combined with extracts. And thus, this application can gradually be visited, and this at your own pace. The core ideas behind this application is that the users can move individually through the exhibition, and often they are overtaxed with the topic shown, and for that reason, one can also like pause and pick up again. And there is a facilitator, Mr. Kochman, who is responsible for the modern history also in ZDF. So younger people, it is an accepted personality. And to me, it's also important that this self-guided exploration gives the opportunity of learning about historical facts. Of course, we hope that this application will be used. There are other materials that ZDF also makes available for this type of teaching in order to make it available for the day-to-day business. At this point, I would also like to thank the memorial site for this new and maybe unusual cooperation. That's it from my side.
Ja, vielen Dank, Dinos Chinshana. Wir haben gesehen, dass in der virtuellen Anwendung
Thank you, Dinos Chinshana. In your virtual application, we've seen you not following up on the last conversation. Sorry, not following up on the table or using the table. And that's something, I think. I won't want to lose time now because we will talk to all the 5 of you in a moment. I would like to introduce the next speaker. It's Nora Manoukian. I would like to say thanks to her for stepping in short notice for Ruth Preusse. She is a historian and she's responsible for press and public relations work at Heinz-Zeitrein Memorial Site, which is part of the Saxonian Memorial Sites. For those of you who are not familiar with that site, it reminds of a Soviet labor camp in which 25,000 Soviet war prisoners died, mostly starved or died of malnutrition. It is located in northern Saxony between Dresden and Leipzig. Nora Manoukian has been involved with educational work at memorial sites for a long time. She worked for the Birner Sonnenstein Memorial Site, reminding of the murder of inmates of mental health institutions, and she also worked for the Hygiene Museum in Dresden, and she was a coordinator at the Saxonian Ministry of Culture and at the Dresden State Cultural institutions. She's dealt with the penal law side of war crimes in the GDR. Nora Manoukian, looking forward to you presenting the website Remembering Injustice, Unrecht erinnern. Thank you. Hi there. Thanks for the kind presentation. I would like to say hello to you from Zeithain in Saxonia. And please bear with me, I don't have a presentation for you, but would like to delve into the topic. I will present the project using the website, and I'll share my screen so you can see the website together with me. So the project Remembering Injustice started out in 2018 at the House of the Wannsee-Konferenz building, initiated by Ruth Preusse, who cannot be here today. She would have loved to introduce her project herself. The project started with a very comprehensive financial aid through the foundation Erinnerung, Verantwortung, Zukunft, and also the institution Memorial International Moscow. It's an institution that you might be aware of because this association has just been forced to close its doors by the Russian government. The exhibition was completed during the pandemic. The project started in 2018. It was completed during the pandemic and after the start of the pandemic. So it wasn't presented properly at the House of the Wannsee-Konferenz. So this would have been the opportunity today for Ruth Preusse to present the project to a larger audience today. Mid-2020, the website, the way you see it today, was published. It's a bilingual website, and you can see that there's a link to the Russian version, and at the right far top end, and it is a website directed to teenagers, German, Russian website. The wording adapts to that target group. You can see that it's made for school students who do not have to work their way through complicated vocabulary. The exhibition reminds of war crimes committed against Soviet war prisoners during World War II, but it also speaks of the repressions that the returned war prisoners had to suffer from and their families had to suffer from in post-war times in the Soviet Union. And it also shows the remembrance commemoration culture in the divided Germany, that is in the Federal Republic, as well as in the GDR, and also in post-USSR. So the memorial site that I am talking to you from was one of numerous partners, various partners who designed this website together. We were one of the supporters, and we assisted Ruth Preußer also, because the topic of Soviet war prisoners really had not been a research topic dealt with at the House of the Wannsee-Konferenz. Then I'll take another view. I won't be speaking about the emerging of the website, but I would like to describe to you what my perspective of usage is, because at my memorial site, I use it as a source. I use it a lot in my educational work, and I will tell you more about it during the breakout session. So let me give you an insight into this virtual exhibition. I would like to show you the introductory film, which shows you the facts and figures and the special aesthetics and graphic design that this presentation or that this virtual exhibition uses. So technicians, please play the video now.
On the
22nd June 1941, Germany attacked the Soviet Union. Stalin and the Red Army were not prepared for that, because both countries only 2 years before that had concluded a non-attack contract. But for the Nazis, the Slavs were subhumans. They were supposed to make room for the Germans and only be used as forced laborers. The Wehrmacht gave the orders for this war. Terrible war crimes were the consequence. Wehrmacht and SS units burned down whole villages, murdering systematically supposed partisans, amongst them the Jewish population mainly. And they took millions of people to forced labor. Also, treating war prisoners was subjected to the racist attitude of the Nazis. Political commissioners and Jewish soldiers were singled out and shot directly. The others were hardly given any food. The spared food was supposed to be there for their own soldiers and the German population. In the first months of the war, the German campaign seemed unstoppable. Millions of Red Army soldiers were caught as war prisoners, also women that had volunteered. Mass starving was the consequence. Who had survived the first month in the temporary camps in the occupied regions was used as a forced laborer. Hundreds of thousands of people were taken to Germany. All over Germany, prisoner war camps had been established that distributed the prisoners. Prisoners were given even less food than other war prisoners from other nations. Between 1941 and 1945, 3.3 million Soviet soldiers died in German imprisonment. That makes it a death rate of almost 60%. The end of the war meant no redemption for the survivors, because they knew that they could be punished in their homes. Stalin, when the war started, had declared that whoever would let themselves be caught and taken in prison would be punished, and even their families were affected by the measures. The families were tested at NKVD. Some were sentenced, some had to serve in the army longer. When they returned home, they didn't find jobs or homes and got no benefits like the other war veterans. Only when the USSR ended under President Yeltsin, war prisoners were fully rehabilitated. So there's hardly any commemoration for these war prisoners because during the Cold War, this topic was kept quiet in West and East Germany. Only in 2015, German parliament recognized war prisoners, but many Germans don't want to see the responsibility of the Wehrmacht. And Russia officially loves to speak of the victorious Red Army that liberated Europe of fascism, rather than speaking about the crimes committed amongst the own population. But in the affected family, this injustice has never been forgotten to the very day.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Thank you.
Jetzt müsste ich wieder so
Now, I hope that I can be heard again now. I can still see the film playing in the background. Maybe someone can give me a feedback on whether I'm live again.
Ja, nach dem Einführungsfilm, Sie haben den gesehen.
Okay, so you've seen that there's a lot of information in this short video. We see different perspectives and information, which then are taken to a deeper level in the following information. There's 3 access and points. That's these are the different places you can delve into, and this exhibition is a dynamic one, different from a physical presence exhibition that you would go and visit in a physical place. In a virtual exhibition, there is the option of adding more places. The second access point is related to topics like ideology, legal situation, imprisonment, and others. And then there's, as a core piece, there's the biographies, very important for the collaboration with any other memorial site that's dealing with people's personalities and biographies. You can click on these people here. Ruth Preusse made it a special point to look at female war prisoners, Red Army soldiers, female soldiers, and she wanted to remind them, Olga Glubina, for example, and Antonia Trofimova. So she was able to do that. 4 interviews were contributed by Memorial from Russia. They gathered these interviews for their research on Stalinist persecution in the Soviet Union, so that these are interviews with returned survivors of war imprisonment, which contain this perspective, not just until 1945, but these interviews go further and tell us about what happened afterwards in the Soviet Union upon their return. And then there's another special feature. This is the Join the Project feature. This is the interactive part of it. Here's the possibility for school students and other students and other people to contribute with their own work. If they find any traces in their homes, for example, I've used this portal with pupils and school groups already. And also there's 3 topics. You can see this as there's the learning unit of biographies, then there's special places like graveyards, and then there's perpetrators as a 3rd topic. These are the 3 topics of commemoration, which help teachers design their teaching units as they work with teenagers. So this is my presentation of the website, which looks at the hands-on aspects of educational work. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody see me? I've just been told to move closer to the camera. Okay, thank you very much for this introduction. This is a topic that really makes you speechless. and it's a topic that is unknown to many people. Soviet prisoners of war at the time of the Wannsee-Konferenz were the biggest victim group in Germany, and the masses of people dying, this did not go unnoticed by the German civilian population. And when it comes to the recognition and compensation, until today, they have remained among the ignored victims of the Nazi regime. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce the presentation of Flavia Citrinio, Christoph Kreuzmüsser, and Antoni Zakrewski. Antoni is joining us virtually, but Flavia and Christoph are here right next to me. I don't need to introduce Christoph anymore, and Peter Klein has already done a great job doing so. Flavia Citrinio is a colleague of mine in the Department of Education and Research, and she has made my life a lot easier here. She's studied history at the Sorbonne University, and she has worked on Nazi girls' organizations, and she has also worked as an education expert for the Deutsch-Französisches Jugendwerk, Topography of Terror, and others. Antoni Zakrewski, who I'm meeting for the first time today. We can only meet on Zoom, so sorry that we can't have a personal encounter, but we will certainly meet in person soon. He works for the European Network Remembrance for Solidarity. She is joining us from Warsaw. He's writing his doctorate thesis at the moment. Crime in Poland between the wars. If you know the Stefan Bardock novels, you know what he's talking about. Well, he otherwise deals with the memory studies, and he's also published a book, or he's the co-author of a book, Cities of Memories, places like Berlin, Bucharest and Budapest as spaces for commemoration. Now I would like to hand the floor to Flavia and Christoph, who will be presenting the website Statistics and Catastrophe. Thank you very much. And we will start off with a short advertising spot, as you will have expected.
And I have to change languages now. So what we showed you is like a little trailer our colleagues in the ENRS made, and we'd like to thank them for the wonderful cooperation. Thank you, Toshek, really. It was a pleasure working with you. Dealing with the Wannsee-Konferenz in the last 2.5 days, it was frequently said the conference itself was iconic, and even more so, of course, the protocol. One might ask, though, what is an icon? But maybe, to misquote Shakespeare here, the importance in the eyes of the beholder. Meaning that for us, historians, it might seem that the conference protocol was and is iconic. For others, it might just seem to be 15 rather dull typewritten pages. That is one of the reasons why, if you look at the protocol, like the 15 dense pages, they are often just reduced, as Norbert Frey pointed out two core quotes, which we all know, and then they are repeated in the history books. Visually speaking, it's only 3 pages that stick out. That's the first 2 pages, that's the list of participants, and the page number 6, the list of the to be murdered. And those 3 pages became even more iconic. Problem with icons is they're usually not looked at. They're taken to be standing for something, and they're not studied in depth. And I think as historians, we have to learn to mistrust icons. Dandina pointed out that a closer look at the list of participants actually reveals a nagging question, and that is why Heydrich wasn't on that list. But what holds true for the list of names holds even more true for the list of numbers. Hannah Arendt once said, in the wonderful essay, We Refugees, I speak of unpopular facts, and I do not even dispose of the sole argument which impress modern people, figures. Figures do impress us, and page number 6 does impress us. If you look at it though, as an icon, you won't see a lot. We have to analyze it, and that's what we wanted to do. Who made the list? Okay, Eichmann made the list. How did he do it? Why isn't the list on a strict alphabetical order? What does A mean? What does B mean? Why is Serbia in B even though it ought to be in A? Why is Alsace-Mosel not missing? They could have been labeled as free of Jews already, that territory. Instead, Estonia is labeled free of Jews. Is that true, or is it a fact, or is it false fact? And that's the question we asked.
So as Christoph just mentioned, there is a lot of questions that are raised when one looks at this list. And this is why we try to structure our project around deconstructing the numbers and the statistics that were used to prepare the list, then later on became page 6 of the protocol of the Wannsee-Konferenz. And trying to do that, we had 3 educational goals in mind. The first one is to show that numbers are not just numbers, and that it's important to look at them carefully and deconstruct where they come from and what they actually mean, who they include. The other goal was to stop the representation of European Jews as numbers, which is something that maybe it's not that easy to do, looking at just at page 6 and portray them as human beings. This is something that you can find on the website as the so-called biography buttons that my colleague Tony will talk about later. And the other very important goal we had in mind was not representing the Nazis, the perpetrators, as working only on an accuracy basis, but also making mistakes, and not only, this perfect order-loving Nazis that sometimes is portrayed on in different kind of cultural mediums. And this is why we call the project Statistic and Catastrophe, Questioning Eichmann Numbers. With all these goals in mind, we also had to try to adapt the project to a graphic outset. And this is reflected, the educational goals I just mentioned is reflected also in our graphical choices. The graphic bureau with whom we work together, Superscript from Warsaw as well, supported us in trying to present the page 6, the famous list of the protocol of the Wannsee-Konferenz in a different graphical way, where we tried to break the order that was set for page 6 and then translate it onto a map. And we hope that this will help us reach better our target groups.
Okay, so on behalf of the ENRS, I would like to thank House of the Wannsee-Konferenz for the fruitful cooperation. And on the more personal level, I would like to thank Flavia and Christoph also for the cooperation, which was perfect. So our project is dedicated to the visitors in the House of the Wannsee-Konferenz, not only individual, but also participants of the workshops and seminars. It is also dedicated to the internet audience and the people, of course, who cannot travel to Wannsee during pandemics, especially students and teachers who would like to deepen their knowledge about Wannsee-Konferenz. We also hope that scholars dealing with the topic of Holocaust will find something more detailed and interesting in our approach to these topics and the presented historical sources. All of these target groups might have a slightly different point of view, but I think we've managed to find a common ground for all of them, and the infographic will be a support in the education process. Statistics and Catastrophe website is part of the ENRS project called High Story Lessons. It is a web-based educational platform aimed at innovative approach to teaching and learning about the complicated history of the 20th century Europe. I would like to invite you also to the website and where you can find other infographics, animations, and also lesson scenarios. But first, let's move to January 1942, and we are going to present you the introduction to our website without the comments. Okay, so I will now try to share the screen.
So we have a problem with screen sharing.
Okay. Okay, so here is the starting point of our website, a map which shows the situation in January 1942, according to Adolf Eichmann. As you could see in the animation, the names of the territories are taken directly from page 6 of the protocol. The map is divided into two colors, and part A and part B, as you can see here in the legend. The map is, as you can see, interactive, and you can click on any country and read the short description about the territory. So here is the name, translation, the part of the list, and the number of Jews according to Eichmann. Another very important thing are case studies, and here you can see much more detailed description about the case studies, which we are going to discuss later in the breakout rooms. Also, if you click on the case studies, you can see different historical sources. For example, report by American Joint Distribution Committee, or of course, the Wannsee Protocol with the highlights of the territory. Another very important thing, which Flavia mentioned earlier, are the biographies, because one of our messages is that each number represents a human being. So here we have that this is the 1 of 11 million. So here is the short biography, and here are the photos of the documents issued usually by the perpetrators. And I say usually because this one here is forged identity art, which we also find very interesting. After clicking on the icon of the Wannsee Villa, you can read more about the whole conference. You can see our icon, as Christoph mentioned earlier, and also you can highlight it and make it bigger and see the details of the list. The last thing that I would like to mention is the About, where you can read more about the project, about organizers, and about our sponsors and authors, and contact if you have find any mistakes, but I hope there is not so much. Thank you very much for the possibility to present the project, and we are looking forward to the discussion.
Ja, vielen Dank, Antoni Zakrzewski, für diese.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zakrzewski, for your presentation. And now I would like to take the opportunity to have a discussion. And first of all, I would like to hear Dinos Chinshana. I can see you're great. You're still here. And Dinos Chinshana, in your presentation, you mentioned that this was conceived as education material. It was a young audience that you had in mind. And what should such a use in schools look like? Well, the idea is that if you take a look at the educational structure, there are 3 different stages, so to speak. How do you introduce the topic, and how can you share different tasks, and then how can the students get an in-depth view of the topics? And well, we are no educators, but we are journalists and also like TV producers. So it is true that we really needed to familiarize with the structure of teaching or a teaching project. So when familiarizing with the topic, well, that of course has an important role to play. And thus we also move into a certain depth. And this is why you have to introduce a subject matter. You can imagine that a teacher who, well, as far as the timeline is concerned, it is not just one room, but we distributed it to different rooms, and then you can enlarge on different subtopics. And so self organized studies are important here. That is an important aspect. And all in all, it deals with the first major phase. Okay, thank you. It's quite interesting that you have cooperated with teachers. And my next question is for Nora Manukian. Your work goes in a very similar direction. You told me that the presentation has already been used for student groups, and particularly during the pandemic, personal visits were no longer possible. And your website is the one that has been online for a longer time. The one from TNESH and the ZDF ones have been online only for a short time. So what can you tell us about the reactions? Well, the initial reactions we are getting, and particularly last year when in Brandenburg and Berlin, the teachers really dealt with the happenings and the events in depth, and especially against the backdrop of the pandemic, it was used as a teaching material. It was only complementing existing material, but it was really a great tool for people who were not able to come to this meeting, and thus we were able to work on it. And of course, this created the possibility for students to deal with this situation, and the reactions from the teachers have been very positive indeed. Thank you. My next question goes to the three of you, Anthony, Christoph, and Flavia. Your website deals with one single document, and thus it differs from the two others. This is what makes it so unusual, really. And my question is, well, why should you deal with it? What do these columns of figures tell us about the perpetrators? What do they tell us about the victims? Well, we haven't been able to try it out. We had very little time to develop it. And I think it works on two levels. The one level being the current stereotypes and stereotypes about the Nazis, like Nazis are accurate, but we wanted to question that. And the second one being dealing with a list also gives rise to the question of what is anti-Semitic or what is racist about it. Well, our answer is, adding numbers representing lives with the aim of killing them. So capturing themselves, capturing these numbers is racist and anti-Semitic in itself. So they were working on the basis of personal papers there. In Dutch, it is persoonsbewijs. And that was the basis of their work. And you work together with the European Network, Remembrance and Solidarity. Did you have any other project partners? In RES and our main partners. And we had other partners in Warsaw, and we had other partners, and we worked out the texts. And Elisabeth Kant, Passportman, and a great historian from Poland, Ms. from Kockan.
So my next question circles around the question of fiction and historical sources. Astrid Messerschmidt spoke about that yesterday in her presentation. Isn't Wannsee a place in which visitors might be confronted with a more abstract representation instead of remakes of the authenticity promise? Now, Dinos Chinshana, in your virtual reality, you mix excerpts from the feature film with exhibits from on objects, or exhibits, documents from the exhibition. So fiction and historical sources. Did you reflect on that in the curation process? Yes, we did. This is a very important point. And at an early point in time, we already discussed this because, of course, fiction, including fiction, can be tricky. This is a debate which in film and TV has always been a question, what enactment means for any representation. So we decided to combine this in this case because we can see that especially in film-based narration, we see a very important aspect for teenagers, for the young generation. Film is very important for them. So mixing excerpts from the feature film, that is like a drama on stage, and which makes us see what could have been, how it could have been. That's important. And the second thing is combining that with a documentary like excerpts, so we can show these two elements on one level. So this might be a different form of narration, of narrating history than it happens at the memorial site, and the combination, this mix of feature film excerpts with historical sources might have to do something with what we're familiar with in terms of representing information at ZDF, at a TV broadcasting channel. But in the historical biographies, we strictly guided ourselves on the historical figures. But the combination is interesting. Fictional elements plus the real elements. And you can see it in one point where the only woman who was present at the meeting is shown in the film and in real documents. So that's a new form of telling the story. It's a different storytelling, so to say. Okay, thank you. So I wanted to ask Nora a similar question. So Ruth decided to start with a comic strip. It's a very impressive video you presented to start the website, Remembering Injustice. Some said it was inappropriate to present a graphic novel-like sort of storytelling, or was a response, was it positive? Well, with regard to the response given to the video, I couldn't really answer you that because I only know what my personal response was. So what the reactions from other users were, I couldn't tell you. Ruth Pricer would have to tell you. The International Red Cross, for example, is presenting the topic of the Geneva Convention, which is also very important for Soviet war prisoners, in the same way with animated videos, speaking about human rights in a simpler way. And of course, there is some degree of simplification to that, and some might wonder whether this is still historically correct. I think everything said in this animation is historically correct, but it's incredibly packed with information. Of course, when we watch it, then we know in the 4 minutes what it is all alluding to. But for young people who first start dealing with the subject matter, that's not the same thing, even though they understand the words. Still, a lot of questions are left unanswered for them. But I mean, that's what educational work is about. This is the questions that we can work with as we speak to the teenagers. I use it as a teaser to as an entry point into the subject matter, and later on we get into the details as we speak. Okay, thank you. My next question is in English because it's to Anthony Sarchevsky.
11 million, very prominent in statistics and catastrophe. And that's a wrong number because it was not 11 million European Jews. But why did you decide to focus on that number, to say, well, we say 1 of 11 million, although we don't think it was 11 million Jews at the time that Eichmann made this statistics. There must have been a choice, and maybe you could tell us something about that.
Okay, and I have to say that the whole 11 number is like, we have to deal with this whole baggage because it's 11 million of lives actually. And you have to remember that the fact that they presented the list and the list is simple only on the first impression. I spent the last few months looking at it, but I think this is the 0.5% of the time that Christoph looked at this list. And you can see that it raises a lot of new questions when you are just dealing with this. These are not simple numbers, because actually it's not 11 million. They wrote über 11 Millionen, so over 11 millions, and it's actually 11,292,300. So why make a detailed statistics when at the end you are just writing that it's something like over 11 million. So this is also the fact that we have to deal with, that it's not always 11 million. And yeah, I think when we focus on the biographies, we wanted to like pay tribute to the victims of the Holocaust, and not only deal with this huge number, but also deal with the personal biographies and personal catastrophe that stood behind this huge number.
Okay, thank you. Until now, your website is only in English, but you're from Poland, and you two are from Germany and or Italy, and we have a French partner. And are there plans to have a multilingual website, or make it a multilingual website?
Yes, it's planned in our schedule. We have this feature disabled for the sake of the presentation, and right now it's only in English, but it's available. It will be available in the translation, first to Polish and English, Polish and German, excuse me, and later to the other languages. And we also have a lot of plans to develop our project in the future. And one thing that I would like to add, it's not only available on the website, on the computer website, but it's also available on the smartphones. So we think that is also a nice feature.
Okay, thank you. Die Frage zur Sprache, die wurde aus dem Chat auch.
So the question on languages was also directed to Dinos Chinshana. The question is, will the virtual presentation also be provided in English, or will it stay in German? Well, there was intense debate about that, and there was a bit of a time constraint or time-related pressure, so we don't know how to do it. We are a German broadcasting station, so it was important for us to produce the content in German language. The English versions of the different documentaries is something that's upcoming, and we are thinking about offering the content in English also later on. But as this is the main focus of the ZDF, being a German broadcasting station, a production in German is what we focus on. I think there were two more questions I saw on the chat on barrier-free access to concepts, to the content. This is always a challenge in the multimedia space to provide an access to the content which is also accessible for people with disabilities. So we're still working on this subject matter and thinking about it just now. But in the first step, we wanted to use the collaboration with a website. The project will go on for 5 years, so there's more time. Thank you for this answer. So now I'd like to hand over to Monika Sommerer, the head of the director of the library, who will ask a couple of questions from the chat. Yes, I have a couple of comments, but Ms. Chinshana has read the chat and she's already answered her questions. For all those who cannot see the chat, So B.S. Ebrecht Hartmann wants to repeat a praise for the project. He's saying it's great. And then there's one question which did not go to Ms. Chinshana, but to the three of you.
Proving that the Nazis made mistakes, or can it also be proof of the fictional character of the figures that only pretend to be empirical but actually express the fantasy of the total annihilation of European Jewry and exaggerate the self-proclaimed task of the Nazis to free Europe from Jewish influence? Thus, they would represent the redemptive Nazi anti-Semitism.
Quite a simple answer, yes.
It is.
Ja, sonst, wie gesagt, die anderen Anmerkungen hat Frau Chinshana alle schon
Okay, apart from that, Ms. Chinshana already answered the other questions, no questions, the subtitles, and access for people with disabilities. Okay, well, so if all questions from the chat have been answered, there's one question I've left for Nora Manukian. It's a German and Russian website that was set up, and I used to be a dubbing voice artist for one of the survivors. Do you use this for German and Russian encounters also? Well, it's great to have this bilingual content because we have many bi-national or bilingual groups here or Russian-speaking groups, so we can really offer the content on both websites. And the interviews, also we try to offer as much access as possible, not just to having the subtitles, but also voice-over versions in German, so that almost everyone can access the content easily. So I was able to use this, and especially the bilingual offer is important. But having said that, the website had planned for a more comprehensive inclusion of Russian educational workers, but it was hard to find Russian teachers who wanted to deal with the topic of Soviet war prisoners and wanted to teach that in a Russian school, because this is not what the government wants to see happening in the schools right now. Where the website shows it, how important it is to also deal with the Stalinist and post-Stalinist past and to go beyond that. And it's important to do this in solidarity and collaboration with the Russian teachers and colleagues.
Yes, Markus Rydlewski wants to know where you can learn something on the website concerning the Nazi definition on being Jewish. And Hannah Brüggeler writes, thank you very much for introducing the interesting projects and intensified by the great film, the Wannsee-Konferenz yesterday, and questioning the Eichmann numbers. You feel like being in a perpetrator's perspective. Do you share that impression? One could get the impression that it was about improving Eichmann's work. Well, concerning the first question, the website was based on case studies, and we focused on a few countries only. And there is an explanation on why particular criteria were put to use. And among them are the Netherlands, and otherwise there are references to HI history websites that lead further in this respect.
Tanya, do you want to add something, or you okay with my answer?
Yeah, so maybe that we also focus on the other historical sources, not only issued by the perpetrators, but for example the joint committee, Jewish joint committee, which I mentioned, it was popular source for us to estimate the number of Jews, for example, around 1940 according to this document in general government or Ostgebiete. And yes, we also have links to the high story lessons materials, which I think Flavia mentioned. Thank you.
Es ist aber in der Tat ein schwieriges Problem, weil die
It's a
Liste
difficult question, in fact, because the list that is used at the beginning is characterized and has the perpetrator's imprint, and we always need to make ourselves independent, emancipating ourselves from the list. But it is true that the key is the perpetrators, and we kept discussing it, and that's another benefit of being a pan-European project, like the French and Polish partners, and then the two of us and the colleagues in the room. So we mirrored our work and we stopped each other's if we had a tendency to think too much along the lines of the perpetrators, which was a risk, of course. Okay, thank you. I would suggest that we now move on to the breakout rooms.